Good afternoon. Today we're joined by Jamie Sundsbak from Collider and the Collider Foundation. Welcome, Jamie. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization?
Thanks, Mike. It's great to be here. So Collider is a 501c3 nonprofit here in the Rochester area, and our focus is 100% on our community's entrepreneurs. These are people who are passionate about starting a business and maybe need a little bit of help, connection, and support. So Collider works by listening to these entrepreneurs first, really understanding what their problems are, and then helping to connect them to resources to really make their businesses successful in our community. I've been in the Rochester area now for about 15 years. Love it here. I love this community and just really excited about what's going to be happening here in the future of Rochester. So that's a little bit about me and what we do in a nutshell.
So, Jamie, you've been working with entrepreneurs for a number of years. What brought you to that idea? You're an entrepreneur yourself, and what caused you to become so passionate about entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so I started my first company in 2002, actually out in Salt Lake City, Utah. And there was just an amazing community of people who would rally around entrepreneurs and support what we were doing. And I really always felt welcome and supported. And when we moved to Rochester from Salt Lake, I didn't feel that same sense of support around entrepreneurship. And not to say my business failed because of that, because I think it was more of, not all businesses are great ideas. But at the same time, I felt like, if Salt Lake could have this and other communities I visited, why couldn't we be more supportive of our early stage entrepreneurs? And so instead of doing another startup, I really started to focus on the area's entrepreneurs, just asking them simply what are they looking for? How can I help them? And starting to grow and build a network from that. And then that translated into me becoming an entrepreneur once again and starting Collider Co-working, which is a shared office space in downtown Rochester where people can rent a desk by the day or by the month and find a small community to interact with of other entrepreneurs and businesses in the community.
Excellent, Jamie. And you touched on the shared desk, the shared office space. Why don't you tell us a little bit about why that's so important for entrepreneurs?
So there's a couple reasons. One is the very obvious reason of cost, right? It doesn't matter if you're in downtown Rochester here or downtown almost any town. It is a little more expensive to be in certain areas. But it's important to be in those areas. And that's where you see a lot of entrepreneurs, what we call clustering together. And so by providing sort of a lower barrier to allow those entrepreneurs to come in and pay a lot less than they would to get into a large multi-year commitment for a space in a downtown area or in a new section of town, we can offer them all the amenities of an office space, from desks to printers to really fast internet, to private rooms, to conference rooms that they can kind of share with everyone else. And it gives them an opportunity to get into the area they're looking for. So that's the more economics part of it. The second part of it is that sense of community. They're actually working around other entrepreneurs. They're talking, they're chatting, they're sharing ideas, they're sharing war stories of what it's like to start these companies. And you get this real sense of community from people who are working together. And that's probably the real reason people come back. I always say people come for a desk, but really they stay for the community. And that community is so critical to our entrepreneurs as well as their future business success.
So, Jamie, have you found the co-working and collaboration space to be the only way you can assist entrepreneurs, or is there any other things that Collider and the Collider Foundation do?
So as a nonprofit, we're very focused on, of course, education. We believe that entrepreneurship can be taught. Many years ago, people would think that that's not true, that you should be sort of thrown in the pool and forced to fend for yourself. But Starting a business is starting a business. And we think there's some real fundamentals around how you start a business, how you take a basic idea and learn to understand if that's an idea that's worth pursuing, and then take that idea maybe to your first or all the way to forming a business, to getting your first or second customer. That's really what we focus on at that very early stage, to help those people get the correct education, connections, and network to really make that their chances of being successful much, much greater. We also feel very passionately about our underrepresented entrepreneurs. So I always say people who aren't me, I always say the fat old white bald guy. We want to make sure that there's a level playing field for anyone with a great idea in the community of Rochester. So we've actually been working very hard to work with our underrepresented entrepreneurs, and we were fortunate enough to receive a grant a year ago from the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation to really fund a lot of our work, really specializing in three communities: the Latino community, the Black community, and then female entrepreneurs. And those are the three areas we're really focused on, as an amazing, amazing group of individuals who are all passionate about entrepreneurship. And we're excited to help sort of level the playing field. And really, at the end of the day, how we judge ourselves and what we do is that we really are committed to, we want to talk about the quality of someone's idea, not where that idea is coming from. We believe that everybody should have an equal chance to start a business, to become prosperous, and then to give back to that next generation.
Excellent. I mean, that's a incredibly noble goal. And I guess the next question, one that I think stems off of that, is, we're talking to high school students here for the most part. If somebody has an idea, does it necessarily depend on what their age is, or how would someone who was younger kind of get involved in this community?
So ideas come from anyone at any time, right? My daughter, when she was 3 or 4 years old, had a great idea for a business. It can really happen. And we have these ideas a lot. Even as you get older, you're going to have more and more ideas. It's really about assessing those ideas. And, we unfortunately, we don't live forever, right? So you need to really understand what the cost of each one of those opportunities is. And if the need is big enough, then go after it. And I know that's a lot of fancy words, but at the end of the day, you need to just really think hard about ideas, and you got to be comfortable with pushing certain ones away. Or what we like to do is find someone else who's excited about that and try to see if they can take and run with those ideas. But Collider offers a wealth of resources when it comes to basically anyone who's interested in entrepreneurship. So every year we host something called Startup Weekend, which is a 54-hour really deep dive from a Friday afternoon all the way to a Sunday, to go from idea to business in just 54 hours. And the majority of the people we've had over the last 4 years of doing this program have been high school and college age students. And we teach them the fundamentals of, again, assessing those ideas, understanding how to go out and get those first customers, prototyping their idea. These are all skills that are easily learnable and teachable. It just takes a little different mindset and a willingness to do sort of a hybrid approach between learning and getting out into the real world and really figuring these things out. But that's just one example of what we do. We hold courses. We just ran a course in the summer called From Idea to Customer. And we had one high school student involved in that who had a great idea for a line of hair care products that she was developing. And I think she was 13 or 14. So those great ideas can come from anywhere. And at Collider, we're here to help. So a great start is just reaching out to us and see how we can help.
Excellent. One of the things, and I think you touched on this a little bit before, one of the things that's talked about is the fact that, people say entrepreneurship can't be taught, which we both know is not entirely true. If you were talking to somebody in high school and you're suggesting some things that they do, maybe from a class perspective, or maybe even personally, to kind of get those ideas flowing and to get moving in a positive direction, what would you suggest?
So I know here, we're blessed in Rochester the public school system to have Incubator EDU, which is a very interesting year-long course where you essentially go and work in teams and actually launch a business by the end of the, I believe, second semester. So that's a great resource. That's very laser focused in on this world. But I started out as a science major. I was okay at science and math in high school. So I was fortunate enough to begin my career rather early as a junior in high school in science labs. And I really never thought about business. And so I think one thing when I look back at what I wished I would have been able to take is there's some key elements that we see in entrepreneurs who are in their even their 60s and 70s who are starting out for the first time, and what's what we call the really soft skills. So if you can find classes or sporting activities that really promote a sense of leadership and teamwork, that's super critical. When you think about things like if there's personal finance courses or understanding, that some schools have basic accounting. These things are also very critical to understand. And if you can understand them earlier, that's an amazing, amazing leg up that you're going to have. At the same time, I always tell people to challenge themselves in courses that they may not be as super interested in, but it sort of engages a different part of their brain. It teaches them to think a little bit differently. So for a lot of hardcore science people or business people, I recommend a lot of, or at least one or two classes in the arts or humanities. You learn a lot. I was a sociology minor in college, and I sometimes feel like, at least now, I use my sociology minor more than I do my hard life science major. So I think, stretch yourself a little bit, reach into different things that maybe you were always kind of interested in, but just never really thought you'd want to fully pursue. You just never know where that's going to go. It's going to cause you to kind of frame shift in your mind and think a little bit differently. And that's a tremendous benefit to people who are thinking about starting a business. At the same time, whatever you're passionate in, go for it. Go for it full bore. And maybe that business piece will come later. Maybe you have a successful career as a physician for 10 or 15 or 20 years, and then you decide you have a great invention and you want to turn that into a business. So the business part can always come, but always be looking for that opportunity. Always be looking for things you might see a little different from anyone else, and learn how to really think through those and see if they're worth pursuing. If not, move on, but always be looking for those opportunities. That's really the most important part.
That's incredibly interesting, Jamie. One of the things that I've heard over numerous conversations with business people is that speech and debate and different communication classes are incredibly important, just to learn that kind of back and forth conversation. Is that something that you have found to be important in the entrepreneurship world as well?
Well, we can let the audience assess my communication skills, but you're right, Mike. That's absolutely critical. I was a very good writer, and that's probably why it didn't occur to me when we were listing it out, because it was always a skill that I had. But effective written and oral communication is key. You've got to be able to articulate your idea to someone else. If you can't, you're never going to get anywhere. When you think about debate classes and speech classes, when they talk about speeches to convince or to persuade, those are critical when you're trying to recruit a team, when you're trying to get people to fund you. All of that is very critical. At the same time, those things can also be learned over time. But yeah, if you definitely have an opportunity to to learn from your teachers in some great classes. Again, that just gives you an early leg up that most people don't have even through college.
Excellent. So, one of the things that we've talked about is, entrepreneurship. This is one of the things that people think about a lot. Entrepreneurship means working by yourself. Is that necessarily the case, or is it possible that you can still be working with a team even if you're an entrepreneur?
I have never met an entrepreneur that actually works by themselves. Everything an entrepreneur does is about relationships and relationship building. We don't even get serious about, helping, say, a new venture unless there's a team of 2 or 3. The more diverse founders you have on your team, the better your chance of success. Nothing operates in a vacuum. I mean, there's those rare cases where someone can do it all. But when I think of the world of, high tech, high growth startups, most people won't even invest in you unless you have a team. It's super critical because at some point you're going to start to grow and you can't handle it all yourself. There's just no way you're going to be able to do it all yourself. You have to find great people. You have to find teams that you can trust. We always jokingly say that you're going to spend more time with a co-founder of a company than probably you will with your future spouse. So it's a dating relationship. It's almost like another marriage that you have, but you have to have those absolute trust between founders. And I think that really does dictate success. At the same time, if you're doing it as a solo founder, you have to rely on other people to help fund, to outsource different things like marketing, social media, things that you can't be good at everything. So you've always got to find people to help you to be successful. And I don't think there's one entrepreneur I've ever met that says, I did this all myself. They realize it really does take a village to raise a startup. And that's something that we preach very heavily here at Collider.
So, Jamie, I know that your role isn't exactly the same as what anybody else's role would be as an entrepreneur, but can you just walk us through a little bit about what your average day looks like, so people can get kind of an idea?
Yeah, so I guess we're actually nationwide, we're working on a term for what I do. It's so new. And the concept that everybody's sort of kind of come up with and said, okay, let's just call it this, is a phrase called ecosystem builder. So we talk about entrepreneurial ecosystems that helps an entrepreneur. So if you could think about it and boil it down, I am a connector because I've managed to understand what resources exist in our community to help entrepreneurs. And then I'm that sort of bridge between the entrepreneur and the resources, because sometimes you can spend tons of time looking for those resources and waste tons of time and money as an entrepreneur. It'd be easier if you go to someone like me who's an ecosystem builder and say, these are my problems right now, help me out. And I can say, hey, you should go to the Chamber of Commerce. Hey, you should go to Mayo Clinic Ventures. Here are all the resources that you can have, and I'm going to make the best use of your time and get it done fast. So I just wanted to kind of give you a broad overview of what I do. A typical day for me is getting up super early. I'm a big believer in planning my day ahead of time so that really I can have more authentic discussions and interactions with people and be kind of on autopilot. So having a great calendar and a to-do list to kind of say, these are all the things I'm going to accomplish today. And then I go on autopilot, spend time with my family in the morning, get to work. I always get to work before anyone else. That's something that my father really was a big influence in my life, said, you got to get there before everyone else. Get my day started. Typically, pre-COVID, it was a lot of coffee shop meetings with entrepreneurs. It was a lot of time on the phone. Lots of emails, reaching out and talking with entrepreneurs as well as other organizations that support entrepreneurs. And then about, after a couple meetings, then we work on, we're creating more programming at Collider. So we're working on educational initiatives, curriculum for classes. but we're also planning our next events around entrepreneurs in the entrepreneurial community. So it's doing a lot of things and wearing a lot of hats, and also managing the co-working space. So developing the relationships with the tenants in the co-working space and making sure that they're well taken care of. And then it's jumping probably into more meetings in the afternoon and spending time with people and understanding how we can help them moving forward. And then about 5 o'clock, it's time to go home. I try to believe in the great entrepreneur and venture capitalist Reid Hoffman, who says, you know, at some point every day, you just have to let those fires burn. Go home, forget about it, spend time with your family, do things that you love to do, and get to bed early and get up for the next day. So it, in a nutshell, it's about just maintaining relationships with people, creating events, education around what you're hearing from those people, are those entrepreneurs, and then just continuing to move forward every day. And something new, you know, I have a new role I'm actually now just stepped into called the interim director or executive director of Collider. So I'm learning a lot about fundraising again and how to continue to make this a resource that entrepreneurs can depend on for the next 10 or 20 years.
Excellent. You know, one of the things that you touched on, and I really want to see if we can expand on it a little bit, is that idea of work-life balance. I think that a lot of people think of an entrepreneur and they think of somebody like, I'll just say Steve Jobs, that, you know, the conversation about Steve Jobs was how much time he always spent at the office, and everything he did was about Apple. That's not necessarily the case for everybody. Why don't we talk a little bit about work-life balance and what that means?
Yeah, there's definitely a glorification of very successful people. There's also people who have very successful social media profiles, which will tell you to grind and hustle and do it and do it and do it and push yourself. That works for a while. And I think in anything you do in life, there will be times when you have to really push and get to that next milestone. But you can't sustain it. It's just, there are rare people that can, but very few of us can really sustain that frantic pace for too long. So you've got to fall back on, you know, the rest of your life. What I find too is if I'm overworked and I'm pressing and pushing myself over and over and over, my creativity is like zero. You know, I can't figure out solutions to things. I need to refresh my brain. So I am a big fan of just, you know, at a certain time, shutting everything down and realizing it's all going to be there the next day. I think that's the best way to do it. You know, we as Americans don't take enough vacations. We just don't do it. Compared to, say, the rest of the world. You know, we really need to think about that stuff again, because another thing we're starting to see and get more involved in here at Collider is mental health and wellness. And being an entrepreneur can be very lonely. You know, I talk about a community supporting you, but at the end of the day, it's you and your team trying to build something and put it into the world. It's lonely, and you need to be able to understand that there are resources out there to help you move past barriers and ruts. And I always say that, you know, if you believe entrepreneurship's a straight line to success, you're deluding yourself. In fact, it's very up and down, and that ups and downs can happen 3 or 4 times a day. So you have to become really resilient. You have to become really, really thoughtful about things in a way that probably many other careers you just don't do that. I actually had some mental health issues last year, which I'm very open about. And it was funny because my physician diagnosed me with PTSD and basically said, you have the same symptoms as someone who came back from basically a war. And it's because you have these tremendous ups and downs and things going on in your life as an entrepreneur. You need to find a way to balance that. And you need to really remember at the end of the day, you can build the most successful company, but if you're left without a family, without any other life, that's not a great life to live. So, enjoy it, set boundaries, and I think you're going to be as successful as you would be if you were just grinding away, 20 hours of the day.
That's really interesting. And I have said often to people, one of the best statements I've ever heard is you can't call yourself a success if you end up going home to an empty house. So it's good to hear that from people who are working with folks in that kind of that front line of entrepreneurship. That's incredibly healthy. One of the other things, and I want to go back to something else that you said previously, you talked about creativity and how important that creativity was to you in what you do. Is there any way that you would suggest that people kind of work on boosting their creativity, working on their creativity?
So we're all born the most creative we'll probably ever be in our life. It's a blessing and a curse, right? Because that creativity, for one reason or another, seems to diminish about the time you're in high school. And what we want to do is make sure, especially for entrepreneurs, creativity is key. One of my favorite books is Creative Confidence, by David Kelly. And that is really an exercise in how to build that confidence back, to build that creativity back in your head, just by doing simple exercises and understanding maybe some helpful things. But really, at the end of the day, when you look through that book, it's about play. It's about going back to what we did as kids, and we went around and we played with each other and we drew, and we expressed ourselves very, very creatively. And it's getting yourself as the crusty old adult to really re-embrace a childhood that was filled with creativity. Entrepreneurs need creativity. Like I said, you have those ups and downs. Sometimes they're happening 2 or 3 times a day. Creativity is so key. Trying to see beyond the problem and move around that barrier. Those are creative solutions. And entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, are really masters of utilizing creativity in putting together things in ways that have never been seen before. And so definitely I would recommend, there are a few great books on the subject, as well as just never try to lose that sense of creativity. Always be you. I don't know if that's hip or trendy anymore. You can all judge me on that, but just be yourself, be creative, embrace weirdness. That's another thing we hear from many communities as we travel around understanding their entrepreneurial communities. And so many of the successful ones is like, be weird. It's okay to be weird. And that leads to, fostering more creativity as well.
Thank you, Jamie. That was great. And if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do so?
So probably the most direct way is like this old school thing. It's called email. I know many people don't use it anymore, but I do. It's our email address is hello@collider.mn. That's the most direct way to reach me. Otherwise, Collider is on pretty much every social media platform except Snapchat and TikTok. Didn't quite make that yet. A little bit old for that. But anything else, we're there. Just do a search for Collider and throw Rochester in as well. Collider is actually a very successful movie site, which we found out much too late after we named the company. But we're happy to be able to connect with you. Like I said, the first thing we do is listen. We want to understand where you're coming from, what your thoughts are, and we want to find a way to help you. So yeah, reach out, hello@collider.mn.
Excellent, Jamie. Thank you very much. This is going to be incredibly helpful for the folks that are watching it. I appreciate it, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.